Hello, and welcome. I am here reading from the book Voices from the Falling by Michael Tourville. We're going to be reading each week one chapter so that so you can join us for our group discussion on Zoom and Facebook Live on Thursdays. Okay? So here we go. Chapter 1, page 13, A Mom's 15-Year Nightmare. The Story of Joe. June 2004 was an eventful month. On the first Saturday, I graduated from high school. The following Saturday, the 12th, I turned 18. My mom's birthday was a week later. On the last Saturday of the month, I broke my thumb. This was a pivotal time in my life, the dividing line between childhood and adulthood, and of all those events, the broken thumb had the largest impact on my future. My sister Lisa was 7 years older and had already moved out of the house. My younger brother Tom was still in school, 2 years behind me. I was looking forward to my adult phase, but before getting serious about my future, I was ready to enjoy the summer. On the last weekend of June, my friends and I had a few harmless beers, and I got into a fight with my cousin and punched him in the head over something stupid. The next morning, my hand was swollen and blue, and I immediately went to the doctor and was told I broke my thumb. After surgery, a few days later, I was sent home with my hand in a cast and a bottle of Percocet. This incident began a horrible 8-year ordeal of drug addiction that devastated my parents, ruined my ability to earn a steady income, and almost permanently destroyed my family. Time after time, I thought I had it handled and convinced myself and others I was clean for good. And every time I went back, I would beg them to help me after all the fight, lies, and manipulation. So many times I'd give them hope, only to crush it as carelessly as twisting your shoe on a cigarette butt. As many times as I quit, I went back. Every single time, except once. The first prescription of Percocet did its job of taking pain away. I told the doctor the pain persisted, and he gave me a second bottle. That was easy. I thought to myself, despite my best efforts, it didn't work a third time. The doctor refused, saying I should be pain-free and off the pills. I needed another source. So I reached out to my few friends who were doing Oxycontin. They hooked me up in no time. I bought whatever I could get. It wasn't cheap, but I could afford it, at least early on. My tolerance built up, and the more I took, the more I needed. I quickly learned more efficient ways of taking the pills from my experienced friends. We'd get our pills, crush and snort them for a quicker high, sit back and hang out and watch movies. Tuesday night was movie night. Friday night was party night. We'd drink, smoke a little weed, take pills, whatever we had. The pills cost $30 to $40 each, and I was quickly running out of money. I became desperate and didn't care who I got them from. Consequences didn't register. I was incredibly selfish, but not conscious of it. Deep down, I knew it was wrong and had to stop, but I craved the drugs so badly I couldn't function without them. I would rationalize in my brain that I could stop any time. Never right now, I'd think. Maybe another day. It was just too overpowering and became more important than anything. It literally took over my life. I viewed my family as interfering obstacles to work around, to lie to, or better yet, to avoid whenever possible. I became detached, cold, and distant to people who loved me. Sue, Joe's mom. Several months after Joe's thumb surgery, I noticed he wasn't as energetic as before. It didn't happen overnight, as I was slow to notice the difference. Then he'd nod off at inappropriate times, like at dinner or during a conversation. Those were the first indications he was working hard at the paper company, but I thought, hey, this kid's 18, he shouldn't be so tired. I was also struck by how broke he was. He made good money and lived at home with us, so it made little sense. His personality was changing, and I was getting concerned because he spent so much time alone. I grew suspicious and asked a few probing questions, but he was evasive. I also asked and wanted to know, or I also wanted to treat him as an adult and respect his privacy, so I didn't press the issue too hard. I hadn't thought about using heroin before, but one of my friends was a full-blown heroin addict, and I was curious. He came over one day and asked if I wanted to try it. I didn't really like it the first time, but tried it again when I was on my own. That was all it took. The end of wondering. It was one of the best feelings in my life. Next thing I know, I'm off the pills and only shooting heroin. It was so much better and cheaper too. Sue. About a year had gone by, and I hadn't noticed any change. Joe was in his bedroom one night, and I called him from the kitchen. He didn't answer, so I went to his room and opened the door. What I saw took my breath away. He had a needle and syringe in his hand and was about to shoot heroin in his veins. I screamed at him to put it down. "Just let me finish," he desperately repeated. "Go away and let me finish." I refused, and he begged me to leave. He was panicking because I was depriving him of the high he was anticipating. I had never seen him like this before. I told him I would not sit there and let him shoot himself up. We argued and he left. It was not a pretty scene. He stayed out all night, and when he returned in the morning he refused to talk about it. And when he started talking, he lied. He said he was stopping, telling me all the things I wanted to hear. He wanted to appease me just to get me off his back. I knew he was lying, and we continued to find needles around the house, even in plain sight. He was careless and disrespectful, and I didn't know if he was being defiant or stupid. Either way, he didn't seem to care. Whenever my parents gave me a hard time, I would leave, that's all. I had no defense, no rational argument, so walking away was the easiest thing to do. Only when I had nowhere to go and no other options, I'd pretend to give in. Complying was easier, so I'd just lie to shut them all up. I was going to work at the paper company every day on time and had no issues. I wasn't bothering anybody and thought they should leave me alone. Work was slow and I got laid off, so I was home more than usual. My parents' patience wore thin, and they grew angrier with me by the day. I'd drive them crazy for a few days, get in a fight, and leave. Even my brother was on my case, and I couldn't take it any longer. I'd stay at a friend's house, but I wore out the welcome mat there too. I finally agreed to go to detox. Tom, Joe's younger brother. I had always looked up to Joe, but he was acting like an idiot and a completely different person. When he wasn't home, things were fine. But when he showed up, everything turned upside down. Everyone seemed mad at each other with lots of shouting and slamming doors. It was miserable, and I couldn't stand him being around. Sue. When Joe agreed to go to detox, we were hopeful. Looking back, we were a little naive too, as he'd get out and in a short time start using again. The cycle continued. Months of struggling, false promises, hopeful days, only to be followed by a painful relapse. Some nurses at the detox were amazed at how low my blood pressure was and thought I should be dead for the amount I was using. My motivation for going to detox wasn't because I wanted to stop using drugs. I just wanted a place to sleep without being harassed. I got a few odd jobs and even worked at my dad's shop for a while. I showed up on time, did my job, but was mentally absent. I functioned all day just to get through, while all I thought about was getting enough money to buy more heroin. Any money I earned went straight to the habit. Mark, Joe's dad. One morning, I was getting out of the shower with my towel and caught Joe in our bedroom going through my pants and wallet looking for money. I yelled at him to get out, and he ran like a scared dog. I had to wonder, who was this guy? This child Sue and I brought up was a complete stranger to us. Sue. It was after midnight, and something woke me from a sound sleep. It wasn't the sound, but more like a weird sensation that stirred me awake. I opened my eyes slowly without moving a muscle. Through the darkness, I saw Joe on his stomach, creeping along in slow motion like a trained Navy SEAL, crawling undetected through a swamp in enemy territory. It seemed surreal until I saw him slowly extend his arms to my dresser where my pocketbook was. Then it hit me like a lightning bolt, and I jumped out of bed and shouted, "Joe!" He jumped up and ran out. We had a terrible fight, and he left, as usual. I was pissed off at everybody. My parents believed nothing I said, and it was harder to get away with anything. It was like they had an antenna and were ready to jump on me for everything. They didn't believe my lies. I was getting caught taking money, and they lost all trust in me. I went to a friend's house for a couple of days and was told to leave, and found my way to a homeless shelter for a bed. I hated the shelter. I was tired, hungry, and I had no money. Sue. After about a week, Joe came home begging for help. In all that we had gone through, I never saw him like this. After so many visits to detox, we lost hope and wondered if it would ever end. Just one agonizing defeat after another, with a constant worry that this next use would be fatal. So many days I'd wake up thinking, is this the day Joe dies from an overdose? The thought never left my mind. Mark and I were beaten, and at the very end of our ropes. We were relieved when he agreed to go to the Phoenix House in Springfield for a few months. Phoenix House is a nationally recognized behavioral health care provider specializing in treating substance use disorders. Mark. When Joe came home, we allowed him to stay... Hold on, I want to make sure. When Joe came home, we allowed him to stay as long as he passed a drug test, which meant providing a urine sample. One night, I knew he was high, and I asked him to pee in the cup. He seemed a little too confident, and I knew something was up. He came out of the bathroom, placed the cup on the counter, and told me to dip the strip in it. I picked up the cup, put it back down, and immediately searched the bathroom. Within 30 seconds, I found a small plastic container wedged in the toilet tank with a little urine left in it. I brought it out and asked Joe if he thought I was that stupid to test cold urine. He finally admitted it was his friend's urine he had hidden in the toilet tank. Sue. Nothing was working, and we didn't know where to turn. We made arrangements with family in Texas for Joe to go to rehab there. One that did not use methadone. We visited Joe 2 months into the program, and he said he was dying and had to leave. We told him no, and that he was more likely to die if he got out and started using again. We drilled it in his head that completing the program was the only way to save his life. It broke our hearts to refuse, but we stuck to it, despite knowing the pain he was in. I lost the energy to fight anymore. I agreed to go to Texas to detox, not knowing what to expect. At first, detoxing in Texas was tough, especially with no methadone program. Over time, it was a little easier because the separation from my old friends meant I had no sources to get drugs from. But the physical battle was hell. It was like I had a bad flu with cold sweats and body aches. The insomnia made it much worse, and the constant diarrhea was another thing. When getting high, you are constipated, and that's what the stomach pain is all about. In Massachusetts, they give you methadone to detox, so you aren't as sick. But in Texas, all I got was Tylenol and clonidine for the blood pressure. Tom. I was glad Joe went away. Finally, some peace around here. I saw what he was doing to our parents, and I was mad at him for stressing them out. They didn't deserve any of that. 4 months into my stay, I had an unexpected scare. I was out biking with a few girls I had met at detox, and we came across a copperhead snake. Thinking it was harmless, I tried to pick it up with a stick. Like a lightning bolt, it sprung up and bit me in my right hand. My hand swelled up like a boxing glove, and they rushed me to the hospital. I was later told the smaller copperhead snakes are typically more venomous. I spent 4 days in the hospital, 3 of them in intensive care. Upon release, I was told I would have died if not treated. The bill was over $79,000 for treatment and antidote. The worst part for me was I could not take the pain pills during my stay because of my withdrawal. Only non-narcotic medicine could be used. I went back to the detox facility to finish my last month and then moved in with my aunt. I stayed clean and stuck around for a few more months. I was in Texas 7 months. I came home to get back to work and start fresh. Sue. Joe was home less than a month and relapsed. We had an argument, he took off in his car, and we didn't hear from him for 3 days. I prayed he was safe and remember wishing he would just get arrested so at least we'd know he was contained and under supervision. I'd rather him in jail than left on his own to use drugs on the streets. I wasn't sure how much more of this I would be able to take before I collapsed myself. I was fearful of Joe dying and often wondered if it would kill me before it killed him. In Texas, it was easier, but coming home I couldn't escape the old environment. The places, people, and pressures were right in front of me, and it sucked me back in. But it wasn't the same. I was just sick and getting sicker, so I went to rehab again. To get on a methadone program. I didn't know what else to do. When I got out, I didn't drink or smoke weed. I went to meetings for a year and I made some new friends. I went on the methadone program because I believed in my head it was the only way I would stop. Getting off methadone to me was 10 times worse. The body pain and diarrhea lasted a good year. I was feeling lousy every day, but my plan was to do it for 6 months and get off, and I was determined to stick with it. My counselor tried talking me into staying on, but I started to wean myself off. The difference this time was I was deciding myself. It wasn't my parents or a counselor or anyone else, just me. It wasn't easy, but within 2 months, I just didn't go back. After 8 years of using, here I am today, 8 years clean. When I was getting high, I was never scared. It just always felt so good. I didn't have a care in the world. While that might sound appealing, it's not real. It's hiding behind a false protective wall. Stress and worry are a part of life and are normal to help you cope with day-to-day challenges. Escaping reality only delays facing problems that don't go away just because you hide from them. Living a clean and healthy life is immensely better, but I have a lingering fear if I ever need treatment that requires pain medication, I will struggle. My current job is physically hard on my body, and one day down the road, I might need something to deal with pain. That's the scariest feeling ever. If I'm injured, I cannot take anything. I can live with that if it means being alive and sober. Sue. Joe had been clean well over a year when his brother Tom started. Finding evidence of Tom using, I was so devastated, I blocked it out. I can picture those little blue pills as clear as day. I remember finding them in his pockets and his cigarette packs. Why I was looking, I really don't know. Maybe when I was doing laundry? I remember his girlfriend at the time telling me to look at his arms because she saw track marks. When I found little bags and spoons, I really started losing it. I wasn't sure how I was going to go through this again, and I just wanted to die. He would not talk to me about anything. I believe in my heart he hated himself for being in the same situation as his brother. After all that Tom witnessed with Joe's struggle, I could not believe he went down the same path. Tom went through a period of depression and he had a hard time getting past it, which contributed to him using. I just kept begging him to go to detox. When he would finally get in, I'd feel better. Then a week later, it would start all over again. Twice Tom overdosed and was given Narcan to revive him. The first time the police called me and told me he was found lying by the roadside, unresponsive. Someone driving by noticed a body on the sidewalk and called 911. The police treated him with Narcan, and an ambulance brought him to the hospital. I drove immediately to the ER, only to find him walking out the door on his own. I was shocked they let him go so soon. He was equally shocked to see me arrive, but he easily agreed to come home with me. The second time he was found unconscious in his car in a grocery store parking lot. An employee putting shopping carts away thought he was dead and called the police. This time I made it to the hospital before they discharged him. I called the detox center, urging them to take him in immediately. After 2 near-death incidences, I wasn't leaving him alone for 1 second. I told the counselor at detox I didn't want him to come home, and he needed to go through the program before I would allow him back. Tom told me how much he hated it there, but as painful as it was, I refused his return home. He was my baby, and I wanted him alive. Tom was in and out of detox 15 times and spent time in 3 different halfway houses. He had to be homeless first before they would take him in, if they had a bed available. Tom used for about 4 years, but I'm happy to say he's been off since 2017 and off methadone since January of 2019. He is finally becoming himself again, and as much as I want to know why he went down that road, I will never have that answer. I choose to let things be because I am finally getting my real son back, both of them. After 15 agonizing years, our family is finally whole again. So, here are clinicians' comments. Family members are typically the first people to see a change in behavior from the person suffering from addiction. Usually it starts with something small, but out of character. Initially, families are often under the wrong assumption that when someone enters detox treatment, they will be all better and the suffering and the lying and the stealing will all end. Unfortunately, it is far from the truth, and consequently, the addiction continues without additional treatment. Detox is just a way to separate the body from the drug for a few days, and when it doesn't last long enough, the drugs remain in the person's system and impairs their behavior. Without good step-down protocols or wraparound services in place, most people continue to use right after detox. Leaving their immediate environment can be good because local triggers and influencers won't tempt them. Unfortunately, if people haven't learned to deal with the root causes of their use when they return to their home environment, their cravings and triggers are right there waiting for them. Now, at the end of this every chapter, there are questions. So here are the 4 questions for the end of chapter 1. Question 1. Why do you think the first few times Joe returned from rehab, he started using so quickly? Question 2. How important or effective was it for him to go to Texas, and why? Question 3. Why do you think he started using again when he was back in Massachusetts? Question 4. If you were Joe's and Tom's parents, would you do anything different? Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining us. Stay tuned for more from Voices of the Fallen. Take care.